Hello, everybody. We're here. We're still working on Barbatos for the GWCC competition. We're weathering the Barbatos right now. We're going to make him look fairly heavily weather damaged. The intent on this is for Barbatos to have been on a long campaign, no stores, no paint job, just grinding it out. We know what those are like in those games where you just grind out, and you start getting low on your supplies. This makes Barbatos look like how he would actually be. When we compare the paint job to how it would have looked before the weathering, this is the piece that we're going to work on, which is just a side skirt that comes in right there and attaches there. And you can see it makes the Gundam look just a lot more fierce, a lot more like it's being used. They'll even have some light rust on the actual weapons themselves. And we'll just take you through the process and show you how it works. You don't need to go buy the fancy sponges that the model building kits or the model building companies try to sell. If you want to, that's great. But you can get a sponge paintbrush from your hardware store or your local dollar store, and you can just tear them up off the end. This one in particular came from this paint box set, and I've had other paint box sets as well that have little sponges in it. And that's just because there's more space in the box than was paint. And so all I did was I took this paint sponge and I tore it up into little different pieces. And these here were makeup sponges, and they didn't work as well as these sponges here. So use resources around you. Sometimes you don't need to get too fancy with your tools. And sometimes it's not an excuse to delay doing a piece of the model because you probably have a piece around of that you could use for a tool or to change it. And that's kind of the creativity in the hobby. So for this competition, I've been using the Galeri Kaledo Colorworks paints for all the airbrushing, but they're a little bit thin for what I want to do now. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to show some wear on the paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a gray or a tone of basically a darker white. And so I have this somber gray, which is a blue gray. And we're just going to be dabbing the blue gray down the sides with a sponge like this, or tapping it with a old cheap brush that came from Dollarama. And so what we'll do is we'll open this up. We'll take a dab here like this. And the paint is pre-shaken. And we'll just build the sponge up like this. That's too much paint on the end of the sponge. So what you're going to do is you're going to dab it out like this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to build up where the paint would start failing, which is just around the edge here like this. And maybe touch up some areas there. Less is more on this. So you really want to you don't want to drag the brush around. You just kind of want to dab around. You want to just give some slight imperfections. Now, I'm going to do light dabs all around this big flat area. It's not heavily done, but it's because I'm going for that blistered paint effect for the rust all over. If you're going for a lighter type rust profile, what I would recommend doing is just staying around the edges and maybe a few dabs in the center. So we'll go through, and you won't see it so much on the blue areas, but you still want to touch the blue areas as well. Otherwise, the blue areas will look too perfect. Also, don't forget these joint areas here. So just do some dabbing. Less is more with this one because we're going to keep building layers as we go. Okay, so now that we have this piece all done up, what we're going to do is we're going to get some more of the gray, and we're going to touch up lines to connect certain edge areas mostly that will show the natural wear of the of the paint and the paint failure. it's not going to be too heavy. It's just going to be to accentuate those edges, and especially the edges where there's a hard point, like right here, here, maybe along this line as well. So it's not meant to fully paint up the lines and all that. It's just meant to help connect some of these dots to make it look more uniform, especially where corrosion tends to want to run across an edge. So we're not done with the paintbrush just yet. You got to apply a metallic coat of some sort on top of this gray, just to make it look like fresh metal is actually showing through. Otherwise, it just looks like off-color paint chips and that. So what I have here is chainmail silver primer. This is just goes on just a little bit thick, and it's easier just to kind of apply in the small amounts where we're going to put it. So areas where we're going to try to put it is right here along the edge, right here along the edge again, anywhere where there's a leading line where it looks like there could be a scratch or some sort of extra fresh damage. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a light little touch here, and we're just going to do a light line there like that, and another light line here on this side. I like to do both sides of the corners, but if it's along a flat line, like say right here, let's just put a light strip. We can just put a little strip there like that. And you can use the very tip of your brush if you want. And when I'm not doing a lot of extra rust, I'll just do a really light tip line like that instead of using the side. But I find when I'm doing the rust and all that sort of stuff, especially as heavy as it's being done now, it can cover up a lot of this metallic detail. So I don't mind being a little bit heavier on those lines when you're doing heavy rust accents. If I wasn't doing heavy rust accents, I'd probably be just a little bit lighter on these points. So, and that's it. So I'll go by and I'll do the other side of this as well as this one and come back, and then we get to actually do the rust. And I recommend putting the metallic down ahead of the rust texturing is, for my opinion, it just looks more realistic. I've done it the other way around and the metallic just shows way too bright on the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these effect paints, dark rust and fresh rust. And we're going to do a different method for the sake of this video. So there is the sponge. The sponge takes a little bit of a finer feel, but I've always liked to use as well a cheap brush from the dollar store. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little dab and we're going to put a little bit there, not much. And we're going to just load up the brush like this. Now, if I went and actually put this on my model, it'll show as a really big, show you, maybe I can do it on here. That's too heavy. You want it to be a lot brighter, a lot smaller texturing than that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're just going to take a dry part of your cardboard or whichever fancy palette you decide to use. I don't use wet palettes for this stuff. And we'll go and right along these lines here, we'll just do dabs, right? And you can see it's very light, but it will dry darker. And less is more with this. This is my first time using these effect paints, and I very much love the effect paints. They're great for exactly this purpose. However, it's very easy to do too much effect. So everywhere where we put some gray, and if we did a straight line here, we'll just go across that straight line. You want the brush just to touch the surface. You don't want to scrape it or it'll look like you're painting across. So we'll just go and keep dabbing. See, that was actually a little bit too heavy there. And another thing that I typically do on when getting used to a new color or new texture is this is the inside part of this thruster wing skirt thing. I'm not doing the outside piece just yet that you can see. So I'm just getting a feel for it on a part that will just be a little bit more hidden. Maybe do a little bit of practice because you can practice on spoons all you want. And that's good. I do it too. I first run this on spoons, but spoons are flat, they're smooth, and you don't get the ledges the same way in that. So at some point, you just need to go and actually practice on your model. So we'll add a little bit more. You don't want to build it up too much. We'll just build that up there like that. You can see there's a little bit of texture here on the leading end. So we're just going to add some rust right there on the leading tip of that wing. So when you come back, you'll see this wing completely completed. We'll finish the dark rust. We'll put on some fresh rust and you'll see the final completed model. So before I go and do the fresh rust, what I wanted to add is that when you wash your brush after doing one of these effect paint colors, and if you're using this brush technique as opposed to the sponge technique, you really want to make sure your brush is good and dry so that you can get the same kind of light stippling that you see all throughout this piece. So we'll just go ahead. I'll add, these are all pre-shaken paints, by the way. We'll load up the brush the same way. And again, we're just gonna dab it off around here like this. And you want to use, so the darker rust, that's like old rust. So you don't want as much new rust as you do old rust typically. So we're just going to be very light in adding the new rust. Maybe a little too light there. There we go. So we can see we're just putting in everywhere where there's a lot of dark rust. We're just going to tap on. And this just gives a little bit of depth rather than just using one color rust. You can already see it's just building up and it's starting to look more natural. Now you don't need these effect paints to do real good weathering or rust effects or even oil effects. I dug this one out. This is dark leather. I used to use this and used to add it to model kits, and it worked just fine. But because I'm doing this one for the GWCC Galeri competition, then I figured I'd try out these effect paints. And the one thing you can't get an appreciation for with these effect paints in the video is they actually have a texture to them. Now, I've clear coated some of them already after they're completely dry, and you lose a little bit of that textured effect on the paint, but you still get the same kind of color. It doesn't wash it away or anything. So we'll go around and we'll finish this up and I'll show you the completed model. Okay, everybody, and this is the weathered Barbatos along with these side skirts or thruster units that we decided to paint together. I think it's important to show that the level of weathering here between the leg, the side skirt, and the arm, and the upper piece here around the shoulders and the head, it's all relatively consistent to what I believe would actually look like a Gundam or a unit like this that would be on a long campaign, grinding from battle to battle with very little maintenance. So going forward now, what we need to do is we need to figure out a pose and get Barbatos based so that we can actually make him look like he deserves this level of weathering. So stay tuned because it hurts the algorithm. But anyway, just keep posted, enjoy the fun, and I'll be sure to keep you guys updated as we progress.